This is the Organizational Health Advantage podcast with Keith Hadley and James Felton, principal consultants at Table Group. They're in the business of coaching leaders to build strategic focus and cultural alignment that leads to amazing results. This podcast is for leaders who are looking to increase productivity and morale while decreasing politics, confusion, and unwanted turnover. Welcome to the Org Health Advantage.
Hello and welcome back to the Org Health Advantage podcast. We're really excited to share this episode with you. Keith and I are joined by Pat Vihtelic, the CEO of Home Chef. Home Chef has been on an incredible journey since Pat founded the company in 2013. And part of that journey included partnering with Keith to help align their executive team strategically and behaviorally. In this episode, Pat discusses some of that work, specifically his evolution as a leader, the need to fire himself from certain roles, what made Kroger the right partner to merge with, what went into making that merger so successful, and what traits they look for in all their employees. This episode is chock full of valuable information. So without further ado, here's Pat Vihtelic. Pat, thank you for coming. And Keith, thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So Pat, I want to get right into it. Can you tell us, kind of in a bullet point format, what was going on at Home Chef when you reached out to Table Group? Give us some context, maybe employees, maybe revenue, and then a few bullets on, hey, I'm motivated to call somebody. Let's reach out to Table Group.
Sure. So I started Home Chef, back in 2013. And so the first year I bootstrapped the business. We were growing quickly even as a bootstrap company. And then we raised a couple rounds of venture capital and got the formula down, so to speak, on customer acquisition and retention, and really everything just clicked, and we started growing even more rapidly. And after raising our Series A, this would have been in 2015, we grew the business from 10 million in revenue to 100 million in revenue the next year. So we 10x'd it in 1 year. And that then led to our Series B, where we raised a $40 million round with a firm called L. Catterton. And as I came out of that financing, I was able to spend more time with the team and the company, and thinking about what we're doing well and what kind of opportunity we have ahead and our challenges, and really came to appreciate that we're no longer in one room as a startup. In the early days, we had one production facility. Our office was upstairs. It had no windows. We would do a stand-up every morning with the entire team, and it was really, really easy to stay aligned and to stay on the same page. And around the time of our Series A, we added a production facility. We added an office downtown. It was our first kind of glimpse at having different pockets of our workforce in different locations. And I think started to appreciate as we were growing how difficult it is to keep everyone on the same page. And following our Series B, we were in the midst of expanding nationally, so opening up a third production facility across the country, hiring a ton of people following our Series B as well. And I started to see the misalignment, so to speak, talking with some folks in other parts of the company that might not necessarily be on our executive team. I could tell there were some disconnects. And I even noticed, even on my exec team, people that work together every single day together, it still felt like there were times that we were misaligned organizationally and strategically. So I was having a conversation with one of our board members following our Series B, and I mentioned some of those challenges to him, kind of team related challenges, and he said, "Well, I just did an awesome offsite with the Table Group. Have you thought about doing kind of bringing in someone from the outside to help you get those issues onto the table and work through them as a team?" And so I took the introduction with Keith and met with Keith in our office back in 2017 or 2018. I can't remember the exact time.
2017.
Yep. And so we clicked, and I really enjoyed the conversation and felt like it was worth a shot. I actually didn't know, are we just going to do one offsite, and that might be it. Maybe all my problems are done after that, but of course that's not the case. the challenges have changed as the business has grown, and since then we've been doing quarterly offsites and regular one-on-ones with Keith, and it's been extremely valuable. So, but that's really what led us down the path of engaging with the Table Group.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that context. I'm curious, before we dive into maybe some of the disconnects that you saw, what was it like founding this company and then going from like, all right, everything is centered around me, to building up the team to where things are centered around the team as opposed to you?
Yeah, I definitely had an aha moment. It was kind of the year of bootstrapping. I felt like I wasn't bringing on enough talent. And as I raised a round of capital, I felt like I was doing too much, right? I felt like I was stretched thin, felt like I was still running payroll, for example, things like that I shouldn't have been doing. But after raising my first round of capital, I finally had the ability to attract, what I call kind of a higher caliber of talent, and people team that we could not only get our heads together and kind of think through, strategically what the right direction is to go, but also a team that was willing to roll up their sleeves and execute. And so, at some point I had that aha moment, like I need to fire myself from these jobs I have and get better people around me to help take the company to the next level. And I that happened after our seed round of capital, and as we continued to add higher and higher caliber talent over the years, it's given me so much more leverage and ability to be the strategic leader that the CEO should be, and not be the person that is micromanaging or doing everything or making all of the decisions for the company. And I really saw, it could have been timing as well, but as that talent was added, our growth accelerated. Our margin got better. The business was just performing better, and I saw that. I really thought of it as adding oil to the fire over the years, and still very much see it that way.
That's great.
James, I would love to just explore that, because Pat, as you're articulating that, I was just thinking, for every one founder like you, we meet probably 3 or 4 founders who are unwilling to give up that control, who don't want to step away from being the center of the universe of the company. Did somebody point that out to you? Was that self-discovery? Like, what is it about you that made that possible? And what advice would you give another founder out there who's maybe right now struggling with that dynamic of, I don't want to give up this kind of control?
It was probably in my kind of seed and Series A round of conversations.
Okay.
Round, I didn't have the team page to point to, right? And that was a known goal of following this seed round. We need to build out the team. We need a head of marketing, a head of operations, a head of technology, and so forth. And so that was very much a goal coming out of my seed round of financing, and definitely got that advice, right? Is you don't want to be the smartest person in the room as the CEO, right? You want to be surrounded by the smartest people. And I think it's a combination of feedback and advice over the years, but it really felt like something that needed to happen to take the company to the next level. It felt like if we wanted to, which there's nothing wrong with this, if we wanted to stay smaller and, for Home Chef to operate as more of a lifestyle business and not invest so much in, let's say, our growth, it could have been a route to go and something to consider, but that wasn't my goal at the beginning. I felt like we had a really big opportunity And so it felt like a necessary part of the equation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Pat, I want to ask you a question because that's a little bit of a cliche, not a judgment there, but a little bit like you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, which is a great idea until you start interviewing and you see, like for a CFO or maybe a chief marketing officer, they're like, oh, this person's smarter than I am. And that takes some vulnerability to hire people who are just smarter than you in each of these functions. Was that ever a challenge? You're like, boy, this person's going to challenge my intellect right here.
Yeah, and it's something that I value for sure. And I don't know if I'm a unique individual or not, but I like to think I'm a humble leader, and I like to think I have a ton to learn from the people I work with, or from the people that are on our team in general. And so, yeah, it was, I guess, tough, like that concept of firing yourself from everything you're doing is maybe kind of a tough pill to swallow. But once you see the benefits of it and how much it brings to the team and to the business, it's totally worth it. and it is the way to go. But yeah, I'd say I also value that in the executives and the folks that work directly for me. I want them to be hiring people that are smarter than them as well. And it's just this constant pursuit. And I admit it is a cliche, but it's a cliche worth living by, for sure.
For sure. And I think it's just harder to actually put in practice. I can't imagine sitting there as a CEO and a founder and they're going like, oh, this person's going to be smarter than me in this. And then this person's going to be smarter than me. And the vulnerability it takes to actually hire those people.
Yeah. And, I came out of the investment banking world. So I worked in finance before. And, I think finance and, kind of professional investment banking services world tends to attract a lot of, highly motivated, smart people. And I saw how effective really good teamwork is with very high caliber people coming out of that world, and was looking to surround myself with people that are even smarter than that. Right. And as a good example, the first head of marketing I hired, he aced his SATs, right? I mean, he's a very, very smart guy. And that was something that I really valued. And it wasn't the marketing experience that he brought to the table, because it was basically zero marketing experience. It was more so that he was a very smart person, highly motivated, could figure out how to carry forward and get creative and be resourceful, and all those things that are important for a startup.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you for that. Now, clearly, you hire really smart people. It doesn't mean they're always going to get along well. There are going to be disconnects, as you call them. And that's where you come in as a leader, probably more than just on the intellectual side. It's on the hey, this is how I want the team to operate. Can you talk about some of the disconnects that you saw, and, maybe specific about the disconnects, but less specific about the people, of course. Yeah. But what, for a leader out there who's like, boy, something just isn't jiving with my team, what did you see and they could look out for?
So we were getting, and I feel like I hear this from companies all the time, but we were getting very siloed in nature, right? So our functions were operating in vacuums. For example, and our business has a physical component to it. So we're not, let's say not just, but a software business, right? Where everyone is kind of in the same office and coming with the same context, generally speaking. Not to say that you can't have silos within a software business, because you certainly can as well. But we have, physical plants. Now we've got hundreds of people at plants across the country, and so it's easy to get siloed when you're not together. Our operations team, for example, was coming with a different perspective than our tech team or our marketing team, because they have a whole other set of challenges and constraints that they have to work around, and realities that they have to face. And that's what I was seeing with our team. We had what I would call a full executive team. So we had all of the functions had an executive leader. And as I was building out that exec team, I was finding it more challenging to break down those silos and get everyone on the same page. And that's what I saw was really just kind of unnecessary misalignment, lack of context is probably the biggest call out. And we didn't have what I'd call kind of a kind of overarching framework to unite those silos, and that's what really led us to the table group then ultimately. But that's what I was seeing was just people coming with different information would have made different decisions for the same problem based on that different context, and that's what was obvious to me and kind of got me to a point where I said we need some outside help to get this, even though I might have been considering one of my important responsibilities as the CEO to be camp counselor. I felt like we had to bring in some organized help and advice to take us to the next level.
It's interesting. As I was listening to you, Pat, I was thinking that so often in life, the solution to one challenge creates the next challenge. And maybe I'm getting some fresh insight from you on this one. Is you surround yourself with really smart people, and then left to themselves, they're out there just trying to solve problems, but they're doing it in a way that's not exactly united with each other or aligned.
Yep.
And you got to bring a simple framework to them to say, okay, but let's be clear. Here are the things that I'm really passionate about, or here's where our strategy needs to be really clear. And now to get those people actually aligned around the same principles.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think left to their own devices, smart individuals are going to come up with their own framework if right. not kind of given one or not aligned on one as well. And it's a great point for sure.
That's awesome. So during this run, you folks are acquired by Kroger. And now, what did you do to prime the pump for somebody like Kroger to want to come in and buy you folks?
So there was a lot happening in our industry at the time. So the first meal kit provider was going public at the time. So that's Blue Apron was doing their IPO, and there was a lot of talk in the press about their upcoming IPO and a lot of anticipation around their IPO. And so we were starting to get inbounds and questions from bigger strategic companies, grocers, for example, just wondering what we're up to, and kind of curious about the industry, realizing that Blue Apron was about to go public. And so with that, we actually ended up getting a couple of offers from a couple of different strategic companies. And we evaluated those the summer after Blue Apron went public. I think it was the summer of 2017, if I'm remembering correctly. And ultimately decided not to partner with either of those companies. And we kind of wanted to wait till the dust settled, so to speak, on Blue Apron's IPO and not get too far ahead of ourselves. And so anyway, I made the decision to get to know the industry even better, right? So we had some inbounds and had some conversations going, and I realized I hadn't talked to everyone. And one of those characters was Kroger, and so I figured out a way to get introduced to somebody at Kroger, and it really was kind of wondering what the business opportunity could be working with a grocer. We had a couple of partnerships that we were working on with other retailers. One of them was a East Coast grocer that we were doing a click and collect meal kit program with. Another was a big online retailer that we were making our meal kits available online to their customers. And so, we were kind of pursuing this partnership strategy. We wanted to add a few more partners like that and see, because we were always been a predominantly direct to consumer business. And so we're acquiring customers directly online or through the television. So anyway, started conversations with others where we could potentially sell our meal kits, and had a 30-minute phone call with someone at Kroger. And at the end of that phone call, this person said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing something more strategic than just selling your meal kits in our stores?" And I said, "Yeah, to be honest, we've kind of been through this dance over the last several months, and we're not out there looking right now. But I'm all ears if you guys want to, if you'd like to explore what that would look like. But let's make the business case, right? And let's see how we could work together at a high level." And so got to know Kroger in the following months. So that would have been, kind of the fall of 2017. They came in town, had an awesome meeting with a lot of their team. I was surprised at how many folks came up to Chicago, and was kind of wondering, if this is probably more serious than just the business partnership we were initially talking about. And then again, got to know Kroger over the following months, and it took a lot of relationship building for sure. I came from the investment banking world and have seen mergers go poorly. I've seen the bad side of M&A. And part of the reason why we walked from those couple of offers the summer before is something didn't feel quite right about the offers, and so trust was just such an important piece of the decision for us. And we'll probably get into some of this here in a moment, but just looking across the table and knowing that we could trust the leaders and the partners on the other side was step number one. And step number two was kind of making sense of it all, right? And starting to put the wheels in motion, starting to think about, what am I going to tell our team, right? So that everyone's heard the horror stories of M&A, and no one wants to live through that. And as we were getting to know Kroger, it was very obvious that one of the reasons they were interested in us was our team. So it was going to be just critical for me to communicate it in a way that keeps the team excited, keeps everyone optimistic about the future that we have. And luckily, maybe I shouldn't say luckily because it took a lot of work, but we're about 3 years into the merger now. I'm obviously still here, so I'm having a good time. But our team has also just done an awesome job delivering results for Kroger, and I think we've followed through on kind of our promise of the talent and the team that we're bringing to the table. So I'll stop there because I could probably keep rambling on about it.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to hear. Keith and I have a client who's going through this process right now, like deciding, hey, we're going to sell. So what was important, like just like bullet point, what were the things that you looked for and said like, yeah, this checks the box, this checks the box, this checks the box? You said trust earlier in the team.
Yeah.
In the Kroger team.
That would probably be my biggest box to check. I think the second thing I'd call out is just being aligned on what the vision is for the partnership. That was a very important part of getting to know Kroger on both sides, was making sure that the vision of the partnership is what we both believe in, and getting that buy-in early. And I think involving as much as your team as possible in that is hugely important. I was able to bring in my executive team to the conversation before we announced it to the world. And so, our executive team was coming up the curve with Kroger as I was in aligning on that kind of partnership vision together. And so, I think kind of making the sausage together as much as possible and not being felt like you're being directed as an executive team member to deliver on this vision that you had nothing to do with, is a big part of making the partnership successful. We had the benefit of of creating an agreement that had, performance milestones and very clear kind of definitions of success. It kind of speaks to having a vision around the partnership to an extent, but knowing what makes the partnership successful as well. I think our team, myself included, we like having a goal, right? We like having something to work toward and kind of knowing whether or not we're doing well. And so I think aligning on what success looks like as well is a really important part of a merger. I think that the individuals that, not just, kind of trust from an organizational standpoint, but kind of understanding where your business might fit into whoever's acquiring you, knowing which business units you're going to be working with most, getting to know them if possible. I think that was, not only did I have the benefit of pulling in my exec team as we were getting to know Kroger, but Kroger did a really nice job of bringing in key people on their end that we were going to work with after the merger was announced as well. We did things like even, we had an integration, kind of checklist before we even signed the deal, and just kind of, had a really good idea of like, what does integration mean to you? Because that word is a strong word and can mean a whole lot of different things. But just, getting on the same page with things like that, I think just gets ahead of potential conflict down the road. But I think that one of those kind of integration points, so to speak to the autonomy of Home Chef and what is their intention of their use with our brand. What is their vision for our team? How does Home Chef fit into Kroger as a whole from a team and talent perspective? And for me, it was important to have that autonomy that allows us to perform and hit the goals that we both agree are metrics of success. And they've absolutely delivered on that promise of autonomy as well. And so I could probably keep going, but those are the big ones that stick out to me as I'm thinking through it.
Yeah, that's a great checklist. Thank you. I mean, the integration checklist for before you even sign the contract is really cool, and getting to know their business units and who is leading those and how you could work together with them well. That seems really intentional and things that we never would have probably thought of. That's cool.
Let me ask, I would love to hear, Pat, just to comment a bit on your strategy. From the very first conversation we had, you were able to clearly differentiate your strategy from others in your space. And I'm thinking too of what it would feel like to build a brand, build a strategy, have that success, walk into Kroger. Probably I think they're the largest grocer.
Yep.
And it's like you've done something that they were not able to do yet. And I'm just curious, like, how did you think about your strategy? How was it clear to you? How did you maintain that? Just comment a little bit on your strategic focus throughout this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot has changed even from, the day after close. Our business has evolved a lot. One of the things that one of the executives at Kroger said to me early on in our conversations, we were walking out of one of our production facilities. We had just gotten done with a tour, giving this executive a tour of our facility, and he walked out and we're talking, and we're kind of recognizing Home Chef is very much a meal kit business today. That was what we did then. And he's like, I think Home Chef's a lot bigger than that. And I said, I do too. I think there's a lot of stuff that we could do outside of meal kits, and we had started experimenting with some of that already, but in nowhere near the scale that we're doing it today. But one of the things he said is, I want to give you guys the keys to our meal solutions business. And that sounded huge to me. I started thinking of just how big of an umbrella that could be. And that was obviously one of the big topics of conversation as we were putting our heads together, strategically. And so that being said, there's so much you can do in the world of food. It's really easy to get, off track, right, and too far afield from your core. And so, one of the things that was important for us and for Kroger as well was, keeping the things that have made us successful to get to the point that we were at then, and maintaining those things into the future, and thinking about what are we good at today that got us to this point. One of those really important things is our culinary engine. So we've got a highly data-driven culinary process that we do research and development on to find the best recipes. And so it wasn't just about going out and creating products out of thin air. It was about taking the Home Chef approach and using that in other categories. So ready to heat meals is one big category we're working on today. We're working on Kroger's entire rotisserie chicken program today as well. And so things like that are, part of this meal solutions umbrella, we've approached with the Home Chef culinary / data-driven approach. And so it was important for us to not, kind of veer too far away from what we were good at, but apply, that approach to other parts of Kroger, other parts of the food world. And so we're not, I would say our competencies are pretty similar, right, at the core, at the base, but we're doing a lot of different things now. So we've got, kits and ready to heat meals and rotisserie chickens and a lot of other products, soup and other deli-like items in over 2,000 stores now. So we have a whole line of products that are reaching millions of consumers physically in stores, and in addition to continuing to grow our online business as well. And so, we want to have one culinary engine. We don't want to have 15 culinary engines. And so, it's figuring out how to kind of make all of those things work in tandem, leveraging some of the R&D and the innovation work we do online into our stores and vice versa. But that's probably what I would, if I could boil it down to one thing, it was, kind of maintaining our approach and then applying that to, kind of other opportunity areas.
Yeah. We do so much work at Table Group, and Pat, you've done such a good job with us on what we call clarity. And often that third question, like, what do we do? Seems like a throwaway question, but we'll make the point if you change that sentence, you absolutely can do it, but it's a big business decision to do it. And that's something that Home Chef did, is when it went from meal kits to meal solutions. And it was like, whoa, that's a very, that's a single word that we've switched, but what the implications on the business were huge. And yet you did it in such a way that you never let go of the core strategy that made you successful in the one area. So, just like you've done such a phenomenal job of keeping your team focused and aligned on really simple concepts, even though at scale, that's a massive undertaking, but at the core, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Cool. So I'm curious, what went better than expected once you were acquired from Kroger? And then what were you surprised that it didn't go as well?
So, I think one is having come from the investment banking world, I really wanted to end up with a good partner, and I guess I'm not surprised we did, but I know how hard that can be, and so that's one thing I'm just really thankful for as I look in the past, and any advice I would give for anyone is just to be so cautious around who you're partnering with, because it's not just impacting you; it's going to impact your entire team, your reputation, your legacy, right? And so that was one thing that I can't say I'm surprised about, but it's something I'd call out. I think that the other thing that I'd call out is just how important it is to get ahead of the communication to your team. And it was something that I worked really closely with Keith on as well. And we even had, offsite topics dedicated to figuring out how to message this to our team in a way that is motivational, exciting, and ultimately, with retention being the goal. Like, how do we keep our team around? How do we keep them, as engaged or even more engaged and excited than they were before the merger? And we had to be very proactive on that. It wasn't a sit back and see how the team reacts type of thing. We had our script ready to go. We worked with each of our teams and each of our kind of other layers of leadership to make sure that that everyone understands why we're doing this. What the benefits of merging are. How great of a partner Kroger is, what the opportunity is under Kroger's umbrella. And that I'm very thankful that we took the time to have those conversations. I think it's all too easy for a company just to, send out an email or do something like that. But we had a town hall on the day of the announcement. So I got in front of my team in person. We tried to pack into the biggest room that we had. And so I think that's, just really important that, as you're announcing it, that the CEO is the face of the messaging. And so, that was one thing that, I would say I didn't appreciate when I was, coming from the investment banking world. I was, never working within the company. I would never see kind of what happens after the merger is over beyond, a headline, or, seeing that the merger is going well or it's not. And so that's one thing that I would definitely advise other companies is to take the time to have the conversations. Yeah. It's going to take multiple conversations as well. It's not just one. You probably have to say it 7 times or however the saying goes before it actually sticks. And I would say, additionally, it's not just an announcement. It's a journey. We're 3 years into this, and I still I need to remind myself to point out all of the success we've had with Kroger, all the great things that have happened under the partnership. Because I don't want our team to ever lose sight of why they're here, why they're at Home Chef, and to always be excited about what's next. So.
I remember specifically the idea of it feels like such a finish line to get to that transaction, and then you realize okay, we need to explain why is right now the best time to be at Home Chef?
Yeah,
in what sense are you on the ground floor of something amazing? And that was some just really important messaging that you were able to really embrace and throw out there.
Absolutely. And not just on retention, also new hires, right? How does our story change now that we're a subsidiary versus, a startup that has, equity and some future event, some potential future event. And so that, we had to really think through that. It became, critical for us, not just on the retention front, but also the recruiting front.
Yeah. I loved, Pat, that you said it wasn't just one communication. We had to say it over and over and over. That was for sure going to be a follow-up that I had. But then it probably is also as you do it, it becomes less about announcements. And I would imagine some smaller group settings to be able to answer questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just making sure that, it doesn't even need to be so obvious, right? And it just kind of weaving it into your regular communications and making sure that you're touching on it regularly. I can remember, I think Keith, you mentioned this and gave me this feedback is that it's too easy to get to a negative narrative with a message like this. And if you leave let the team kind of come up with that narrative on their own, it's probably going to be negative. And unless you're there to, kind of reinforce the benefits, the positive side of a partnership like this.
Yeah.
We sometimes call that constellations. It's people see the data points and they fill in the gaps, and they always turn it into a big scary bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is going to be something good. I promise.
Well, it sounds like to me, we talk about at the Table Group those 4 disciplines to running a really healthy organization. And a lot of times we spend most of our time in the cohesive team, which is, discipline 1, and creating clarity, which is discipline 2. But during this, you probably really understood the value of disciplines 3 and 4, which is over communicating that clarity and reinforcing it in your human systems. I mean, you've talked about reinforcing it, or over communicating it, but also the reinforcement and how you're hiring people and what that story is during that process. And it seems like you really doubled down in those last disciplines of over communication and reinforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it comes back to just recognizing how critical talent and the team is to the partnership.
Yeah.
And that is, something I haven't lost sight of, and not just to a partnership, but to a business, right? And to any business out there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You surprised me one time when I asked you kind of midstream how things were going. And I remember because your answers totally shocked me. You said probably the most significant thing that's been helpful to us in this process. And I was waiting for, this massive insight. It was our daily check-ins. It's like 10 minutes every morning, checking in as a team. And I was like, really? He's like, yep. It just kept information real time. It kept stories from emerging. And then, just the way you were able as a team to really stay on top of things throughout a very long season of transition. These were months and months. It wasn't just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's a good call out. And, kind of back to the, why did we seek Table Group in the first place? It was easy to do those quick check-ins or those daily stand-ups when you're all in the same place. And then as the business grew, we started, teams were doing separate check-ins. We weren't doing things together as much. And that to me has been one of the biggest benefits. The meeting cadence in general, I'll say, but the daily check-ins, the daily huddle has just been so valuable. Again, to kind of get ahead of, that's one good reason to get ahead of, any negative narratives that can come up in between touch points.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So Pat, I think about your time since starting Home Chef, and you've had such a breadth of experience now. Like, you've founded a company, you've grown a company, you've been acquired by a big strategic company. And now we've gone through a global pandemic. As you look back through those 8 years, what do you think you've really codified in yourself as like some leadership principles you would say, like, boy, I never want to steer away from these?
There's a couple ways I think about it. I think one is, kind of as an organization, how does Home Chef, how does the team, how do individuals at Home Chef succeed? And what are the behaviors that they exhibit that are in common with our, best players, right? The best folks on our team. And, I think some of them might come, from me, so to speak, from the early days of how I ran the team, and others I think have formed, organically as our team has grown as well. But the one that I would call out, I think I mentioned it earlier as well, but one that's really important to us is to be a humble team player. So the people that do the best at Home Chef tend to be quite humble in their approach and not obnoxious and not a know-it-all, and they're curious about the other person's perspective and getting to the right answer. But being a humble team player is just so critical for succeeding at Home Chef. Another core behavior of our team is that we take ownership, and this is I think a bit of a reflection of kind of our bootstrap days of don't expect someone else to do it, get it done yourself. If someone else can help you, of course, be the humble team player and partner with them on it. But our team is really good at taking ownership of something, getting to the bottom of the problem, and not leaving room for question as to who's going to go and either fix it or solve it. And I think our team all takes some pride, right? Not just some, but a ton of pride in our work and what we do, and recognizing that there's a customer and a family at the end of the day that are going to open up that box, and we want to delight them and want to give them the experience that we promise on our website or in our stores, and so I think taking ownership is one that is also just critical for someone at Home Chef to succeed. And then the last one, the third core behavior that we talk about a ton at Home Chef, we look for in new employees as well, as being a pragmatic next level thinker. It's a bit of a mouthful of a phrase, but it means a lot to us. And what it means is that you can be pragmatic in your approach to, let's say, get the problem solved. Be resourceful, do what you need to do to move on, right? And but also do it in a way that you're thinking about the long-term impact, right? You can't throw a Band-Aid on everything, because then we might have a way bigger problem that we're going to have to deal with in several months or several years from now. And so we're always looking for folks that are good at balancing those things, getting to the bottom of a problem quickly, being pragmatic about it, but not doing it in a way that sacrifices something long-term as well. But those are really the three core behaviors that we look for when we're hiring, and as we're doing our performance reviews as well. The way that we kind of size up performance, so to speak, is thinking about those core behaviors.
One of the things I've loved about those core behaviors, as you've described them, is hearing you tell stories of how they are equally relevant in the early days of Home Chef, when it was literally people from the corporate office running down to help pack meal kits, to fill a big order and get them in the back of a U-Haul truck, to fast forward 5 years in dealing with incredibly complex digital marketing, or solving some new operational challenge that's come as a result of scale. It's like it's the same behaviors, same people doing the same types of things, just different problems.
Yeah,
it's really stood the test of time for you.
And it has, and I think as much as possible, I think leading by example is so important to that. I mean, you mentioned packing boxes. A group of myself and corporate employees were volunteering for a shift last Friday, and we were at the facility helping out with portioning and just thinking about, we're never too far along that we can't roll up our sleeves ourselves, right? And again, being the humble leader, right, and being someone that is willing to get in the weeds with your team. I want all of our leaders to be thinking that way as they're spending time at Home Chef, for sure.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And that goes right into over communication and reinforcement as well of what's important for you folks. Pat, this has been so great. I want to ask you two last questions, and they're fairly similar. But one, do you have a favorite leadership quote that you just resonate with and think about a lot and maybe pass on to people? And two, do you have a favorite leadership book that maybe you've read a couple of times or you've referred people to?
Yeah, so the book that really sticks out to me, and there's quite a few quotes in this book that I could probably point to that I would say have had a big influence on kind of the way I think about things. But I was married about 10 years ago, and we were on our honeymoon, and a book had just come out. It's this isn't going to be your typical kind of business leadership book, but I found a lot of good stories in it, and but it's called Unbroken. I'm not sure if either of you have heard that. It's about Louis Zamperini, who was a Olympic runner who enlisted in World War II, and it is a very much a story of perseverance and survival. And what to jump ahead, I obviously starting a company is nowhere near as challenging or dangerous as what he went through. But I think it really puts it into perspective of how much perseverance can carry you forward. How important it is to be calm and collected and have an even keel and think about the long game, even if there's some short-term pain, to think about the long-term gain and how worth it could be getting through those tough times. And so that's one book that really sticks out to me. I love those kind of survival books in general. There's a few others that I really like that have similar stories, but The Unbroken Story is one that really puts it all into perspective for me, for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, you're not the first person to recommend that book to me, so I've got to go out and get it now. And I have a few friends from USC, and so he's a, of
course, yeah,
he's a USC guy. Yeah. So, well, awesome. Thank you so much for this, Keith. Is there anything you'd like to ask him or end with?
No, I just love to brag on Pat because there's two things that we look for in every leader that we work with. And the first is humility, which we've talked a lot about. But the second trait, which it goes along with the first, but not every leader has it, it's just openness. Just open to hearing new ideas, reflecting on them, putting them into practice, not accepting all of them, but just open to listening. And Pat has always struck me as being so open and then just courageous. Maybe you got that from the Unbroken book, or maybe you always had it. But just, it's like, hey, some of the things that we have to do are hard to do, and they just, they're straightforward, but they're just hard. And Pat's just been willing along the road just to make some really tough calls at times for the sake of the business. And so, yeah, that openness and that courage are just two standout features that I just wanted to brag on Pat a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Those kind words for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pat, for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be super helpful for leaders in so many different ways and very insightful. Thanks for your time, and we wish you continued success.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Org Health Advantage. Your hosts, Keith and James, are helping leaders change the world of work and invite you to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more resources on building stronger teams and organizational health, check out tablegroup.com.
Produced by Audavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.